Let's be honest, Spider-Man No Way Home made history with the multiverse, but Marvel's original plan? It was pure survival thriller. One desperate kid on the run, one masked lawyer fighting in court, and one relentless hunter stalking them both. And it could have been the most intense Spider-Man movie ever made. So, let's dive in. In this version, the story would pick up immediately after the chaos of the identity reveal. There's no magic sanctuary, no safe corner of New York to hide in. Writers Chris McKenna and Eric Summers described it as a fugitive-type story, and that comparison is key. Like Dr. Richard Kimball, Peter Parker would have been wrongly accused of murder, forced to stay one step ahead of the law, and of something much worse. Unlike the final film, Peter, MJ, and Ned wouldn't duck into the sanctum sanctorum for protection. Every rooftop, every alley, every familiar face would carry a risk. His apartment? Compromised. Midtown High? Overrun with press and cops. Even Del Mar's Deli would be a danger zone. The city that once called him a friendly neighborhood hero would turn into a labyrinth of traps and dead ends. The pace would be relentless, a constant scramble from one temporary refuge to another, each one less secure than the last. And in true fugitive fashion, Peter would be stripped of his usual safety nets. This would have been a critical development for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, who more than his predecessors had become reliant on Stark-level technology. With his identity known, Happy Hogan himself would be a person of interest, unable to provide support without incriminating both of them further. There would be no instant fabrication of new suits, no international private jets. Peter would be forced to rely on his wits, his innate powers, and perhaps a battered, low-tech version of his suit. Maybe the homemade one from Homecoming, or something stitched together in haste. This forced regression would have been a powerful tool for character development, compelling Peter to prove that the hero is the man, not the suit. A lesson he only truly learns at the very end of the final film's timeline. The danger wouldn't just be his either. The people closest to him, Aunt May, MJ, Ned, would also be targets. In this draft, they wouldn't be passive bystanders. They'd be on the run too, their lives torn apart. Peter's guilt would be magnified, pushing him to make painful choices, including possibly leaving them behind to draw attention away. This wouldn't be a story of how do I stop the villain, but how do I keep the people I love alive. Aunt May's journey would be one of terror and resilience. Her arc would be a desperate fight to maintain her strength and faith in her nephew while navigating a hostile system designed to break her. For MJ and Ned, their association with Peter would mean the instantaneous destruction of their futures. Their MIT dreams, the hopeful endpoint of No Way Home, would be an impossibility here. Their story would become a subplot of amateur espionage. Ned, with his tech skills, would become Peter's off-the-grid man in the chair, trying to navigate the dark web for information and scrub their digital footprints. MJ, with her sharp journalistic instincts, would be trying to conduct her own investigation into Mysterio's team, searching for the evidence that could exonerate Peter. Their relationship with Peter would be tested not by magical memory wipes, but by the strain of fear, distance, and the constant threat of being caught. Every text message, every whispered call would be a risk. Director John Watts and Tom Holland were reportedly enthusiastic about the idea. Holland even called the pitch really cool. It would have tested Peter in a way we'd never seen before, not as an Avenger battling aliens, but as a hunted young man fighting for his life on the very streets he swore to protect. So, if Peter is the prey, who's hunting him? Not the Vulture, not Mysterio. We're talking about Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravinoff, a man who doesn't need superpowers because he's the world's most dangerous tracker. No guns, no tech, just traps, brute strength, and the patience of a man who can follow a scent for miles. For Spider-Man, that meant every encounter would have been physical, grounded, and dangerous. Gone would be the laser dodging and aerial acrobatics over exploding bridges. Instead, Peter would be fighting to survive snares, poisons, and close-quarters combat against a man who can literally smell his trail. But Kraven is more than brute force. He lives by a twisted code of honor, and in his eyes, Spider-Man isn't just another quarry, he's the ultimate prize. Killing him isn't the point, breaking him is. The film would have showcased Kraven's terrifying competence. We would likely see sequences of him obsessively analyzing the Mysterio footage, not for its veracity, but for its data. He'd map Spider-Man's fighting style, his acrobatic patterns, his reliance on specific web shooter combinations. He'd profile Peter Parker. He'd learn about his compassion, his tendency to protect bystanders, his connection to his friends, also exploiting his love for MJ and Aunt May. Kraven would use the city's own infrastructure against Peter. He'd set snares on rooftops, place poison darts in crowded intersections to test the spider sense, and use the city's panic as a smokescreen for his own movements. He might even manipulate law enforcement, feeding them anonymous tips to flush Peter out into his prepared kill zones. This would have forced Peter to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. As he's hunted, relying more on instinct and less on reason, does he start becoming more spider than man? Kraven would serve as a mirror, showing Peter what happens when raw instinct is stripped of humanity. Defeating him wouldn't be about overpowering him, but about proving that Spider-Man's greatest strength is his compassion. So half the movie is Spider-Man versus Kraven, and the other half is Law & Order MCU. One of the most intriguing parts of this early draft was a courtroom subplot running alongside the manhunt. Peter wouldn't just be fighting for his life in the streets, he'd be fighting for it in court. Legally, he'd be facing murder charges. Publicly, thanks to J. Jonah Jameson's relentless smear campaign, he'd be tried in the court of public opinion before he ever set foot in front of a judge. And this is where Matt Murdock would have truly shined. In the final film, his cameo was brief, a wink to Daredevil fans. But in the Kraven version, he would have been central. As Peter's lawyer, Murdock would be battling the system to clear his client's name, while Peter fights a different war outside its walls. The dynamic would have been electric. Two masked men who live double lives, each working to protect the other in their own way. Murdock, the lawyer who believes in the system by day, and the vigilante who operates outside it by night, would be the perfect mentor and ally for a Peter Parker whose faith in institutions is shattered. The irony? The only person who could legally defend Peter Parker was someone who understood the weight of a secret identity better than anyone. Structurally, the film could have cut between tense, dialogue-driven courtroom exchanges and adrenaline-spiking chase sequences. One moment, Murdock dismantles a witness's testimony. The next, Peter barely dodges a poisoned dart in a shadowy subway tunnel. This structure would allow the film to explore its central themes on multiple levels. The blend of legal thriller and survival chase would have given the MCU a tone it's never attempted. The whole point of the Kraven draft? Break Peter Parker down to his core and see what's left. The journey through this film would have been a harrowing rite of passage, fundamentally altering him and his place in the world. He would have emerged from this ordeal a different hero. The optimistic, slightly naive teenager from Homecoming would be gone, replaced by a warier, more self-reliant, and more mature adult. Having seen the worst of mob mentality and the limitations of the justice system, his worldview would be hardened. He would have learned the brutal lesson that his actions have irreversible consequences, a theme central to the final film, but one that would have been taught here through grit and grime, rather than magic and loss. This version of the story would have been the ultimate test of his core principle: power and responsibility. When the entire world is telling you that your existence is a crime and a curse upon your loved ones, how do you continue to be a hero? The Kraven film would have forced Peter to find the answer, not in a multiversal pep talk from his alternate selves, but from within, forged in the fires of a relentless, solitary struggle. The consideration of Kraven the Hunter as the main antagonist for Spider-Man No Way Home represents a fascinating alternate path for the MCU's most ambitious Spider-Man film. Driven by the narrative setup of Peter's exposed identity, John Watts' really cool Kraven pitch offered a grounded, intense story that could have rivaled Kraven's Last Hunt in emotional and thematic depth. However, Sony's directive to reserve Kraven for their Sony Spider-Man universe, coupled with the multiverse's commercial and creative allure, led to its abandonment in favor of a crossover spectacle. A Kraven-led film would have shifted the tone to a darker, more psychological thriller, emphasizing Peter's resilience and isolation, but potentially sacrificing the nostalgic fan service that defined No Way Home's success. But here's the ironic twist. That Kraven solo movie, the one Sony kept him for, bombed. Which means the best Kraven story we might have gotten is still locked in a drawer somewhere. Because if this script had been made, Peter Parker's most dangerous enemy wouldn't have been Thanos, Mysterio, or even the multiverse itself. It would have been one man, one obsession, and one hunt that changed him forever. So would you like to see Kraven the Hunter in the MCU? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.